Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello, this is Kim Howerton with Keto Life Support, and this is episode 100. It is the 100th episode. Woo! I don't know why that's exciting, but it's a good number, 100. So yay. Yay me. Yay you for listening. Yay all around. Today, I want to talk a bit about dealing with differing opinions on keto. So let's talk about it. So there's good news going on in the world a bit in that it seems like keto conferences, low carb conferences, get-togethers, those sorts of events are going to be happening again over this spring and summer. And because of that, it brings up a topic that I get hit with a fair amount. If I'm at a conference, I will invariably have someone come up to me and say, very concernedly, I've listened to a lot of people talk at this conference, and they say different things, and they disagree with each other. I listened to this person tell you all the wonderful things about fasting, and then there's this other person that was talking about the dangers of fasting. And I'm coming out of this as a regular old keto person listening to these differing opinions and saying, I'm more confused than when I came here. So I wanted to address this because whether you're going to conferences or you're just watching YouTube, invariably you have found dissenting opinions about a lot of keto topics, and you might be confused how this could possibly be. And I actually want to frame this in potentially a new way, a way that you're not looking at this yet, which is this is actually probably a good thing. Now, it might be a confusing thing, but as you make the transition from a keto newbie to a well-educated, understanding, nutritional perspective person, I need a better name for the second one, confusion and having to think things through and things being unclear is a good thing. When we're new to something, we want it simple, we want it direct, we want a how-to, we want black, white, yes, no. Because when we're new to something, we are very, very susceptible to paralysis by analysis, which is we analyze things so much we don't even get things moving. And that is not what you want to do. As I said many times, you don't have to get it right, you just have to get it started. So if you're not yet started, you just have to pick someone who seems to make sense about what they're telling you and start. The good news is most of us, if you look at a bunch of different keto experts, will probably agree on 99% of the things they say about getting started, and will tell you that starting is more important than perfection, and that simply lowering your carbohydrate intake is probably the thing you want to focus on as your first step. And they'll also probably say something about electrolytes. And I also have episodes on how to start keto. So if you're needing that, you can go back and look for those episodes, which I will also put a link to that in the show notes. From there, once you've gotten it started and you're on your way, you will get some additional knowledge about how your body is responding. And the good news is every single one of us has made mistakes as we started, and they were not fatal. We learned something new. We decided something needed to shift. We decided some of the information we'd received wasn't the best at some time, and we made a change and we righted the ship from where it was a little off course. So the good news is when you're new and you know almost nothing, there's so much low-hanging fruit about getting started that you don't need a comprehensive, qualitative analysis of who said what and when and where. There's no spreadsheets you're going to need. You just need to get started. Now, once you've gotten started and you've gotten some experience under your belt and you start to want to expand your knowledge, you have to be prepared for dissenting opinions because there is data, and data tells you the results of studies, right? But then those things are always interpreted. And interpretation can take a variety of directions because when we get to an interpretation, there are filters that we all have that will color how we interpret some information that we got. So when you're listening to humans, because pretty much we're all humans thus far, very few cyborgs in the field, all of those humans who are telling you how to proceed, who are interpreting data, are reporting on things, are advising, are doing so through their own filters. And so that means you're going to have to start developing some criteria for determining who you want to listen to, what makes sense to you, and what doesn't. And invariably, this means there will be a period on your journey where you feel a little unsettled and possibly confused because you like, admire, and think various people are smart who don't agree with each other. And so you're in a place where you don't yet know enough to know how to evaluate what somebody is saying. And that can be overwhelming and confusing. And so my best advice in that scenario is not to get too attached to anything. What do I mean by that? Sometimes we can have the impulse to get tribal, to say, I like that person. They say a lot of things that I think make sense. I believe them. I believe everything they say, and I'm going to think everyone who disagrees with them is the enemy. This is a phase many people go through when they adopt a new lifestyle. Ultimately, you might find out behind the scenes that these people who disagree with each other are actually friends in the background and agree about more than they disagree with. And we're just focusing on the few points that they don't agree on instead of all the points that they do. And so the reality is how you're going to navigate this specific minefield is to have an open mind, listen to those people, listen to the various points of view, and make your best determination of what makes sense to you. The good news is that generally speaking, if you want to try out things that people tell you to see how they work for you, very little trials done on the short term in terms of nutritional interventions, whether they be fasting, whether they be a style of eating, whether they be details about a style of eating, are going to cause long-term harm. Obviously, being a reasonable person, you're not going to do things that seem immediately harmful, such as drinking poison or untested compounds. I'm simply talking about nutritional interventions. And so you can try things out and see how they work for you. Now, there are going to be things that you hear about that don't apply to you at all, like cancer interventions or Alzheimer's interventions. And you can find those things interesting, but obviously you aren't going to be testing them in your own life. But as things might apply to you, you can always try things out. Take them for a test drive. See how they feel in your life and how they might apply to you, while keeping an open mind that there's more than one way to address any single issue. As you progress through your journey, you might even find that you start listening to people that aren't keto at all or low carb supporters even, because they might have good additional information for you to look at in your journey as a whole. Maybe somebody has great information about workouts, whereas you don't listen to their nutritional advice as much. So they might be very skilled in one arena and less in alignment with your beliefs and thought process in another, and that's okay. You don't have to agree with every single thing every single person says to think that they have valuable information to impart. The other thing I would suggest that you develop are some smart friendships, some other people that you have to support you within the arena that you're learning. That is to say, make friends in that world, because as you do so, you will have people to discuss your ideas, thoughts, and confusion with. When I go to conferences, I have a group of people that I think are brilliant, and I can run things by them. I regularly text some of my friends to say, I just read this study. What do you think about X, Y, and Z? And they can respond with, oh, I haven't read it yet. Or, oh, I read that and I think this is valid. And so we have actual discussions about either talks we've seen or papers we've read. Because sometimes you need to hash out the details of your thinking about these topics so that you can get really solid in what you believe. Because sometimes when you approach a new topic or something new to you, your filters, right? The filters, we all have filters. Those filters will impact the way you interpret that information. So you can temporarily raise those filters up a little bit, try to get into this from a new perspective, understand it before you decide you're going to discard that information because it doesn't fit your particular filter. So I can totally sympathize that this can be a frustrating and confusing process to grow and learn. But if some of you remember from high school, college, graduate school, the process of learning new things and expanding your perspective is not always a comfortable one because it's new. And we're not good with new often, and it's hard, and there's stuff that you don't get, and nobody likes to feel dumb, and sometimes we feel dumb when we don't get stuff. And so I just want to support you on that journey and say, it's okay to be confused. It's okay to say, I didn't understand that, but it's not okay to simply reject things out of hand just because you don't know how to line up the facts that you were given. So my belief is when presented with new facts that are, sort of irrefutable, like, well, that makes total sense. And when you've really looked into it, you then bring those new facts into you fold them into your knowledge base so that now you are an expanded human and you have a wider variety of things that you know about. So I just wanted to put this out there that as the world is opening up a bit and you're interacting with more people and maybe going to conferences and or watching videos online, which you may have already been doing because that's what else have we been doing for the past 2 years, and you run into information that is counter to some of your beliefs, that it's a great time to get curious rather than defensive, to ask questions rather than make statements, and to expand the way you look at things. Ultimately, I'm not asking everyone to think completely differently about everything they believe because that way is also not the right path. If you think something and you've evaluated the thought and believe that it comes from a well thought through perspective, then that is right as well. But when we're presented with new information, we should always look at it critically, but not cynically. So thanks for listening to my thoughts on the matter, and I will talk to you very soon. By the way, I'm doing a series on thyroid that's coming up over the next few weeks. So look forward to that, which will include some interviews with some smart people I know. And I'm hoping that everyone feels much more educated on the topic by the time I am done with it, myself included. So thanks for joining me on this special episode, and I will see you very soon.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.